Manuel Muñiz is the former Secretary of State for Global Spain at the Spanish Foreign Ministry. He says an escalation of trade tensions will not benefit either side.
So this is very significant, and I think on the part of the EU, it is very emblematic, because the EU is the world's largest trading power. The EU has by far the largest proportion of its GDP that is dependent on trade. This is more significant for the EU than it is for China or the US or any of the other major trading actors around the world. So the fact that the EU is considering these measures, I think, is very telling of how the EU sees the international environment. And I think there are two paths ahead of us here. One is a path where we entrench our trade policies, where there are tariff and non-tariff barriers that are imposed because of concerns about unlevel playing field in other markets, etc. Or we recommit to opening our markets, but establishing fair competition. And by the way, this is a question for both Europeans, but also for China, because as you know, what has driven the EU to impose these measures is its perception that it is competing in a very unlevel playing field when it comes to Chinese exporters, because of state aid to exporters in China, access to soft loans provided by state or semi-state owned financial institutions in China, issues related to the currency in China, and many others. Also issues related to market access on the part of European manufacturers and others to the Chinese market. So this idea of the unlevel playing field has been very present. So I think these two paths open ahead of us. One basically means recommitting to international fair trade, and the other leads us down a path of international trade fracture, which will be, I think, very damaging for everybody. So I think in the next few years, these things will play out, and we will know the path that we have chosen. And there will be consequences on prices, on inflation, on access to products, on the intensity of innovation on both sides of this discussion, depending on which path we choose.
It seems like over the past years, and both parties have been trading accusations. And in September, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez paid an official visit to China. He said, I'm quoting him, "We don't want a trade war that would benefit no one." So how does Spain position itself in China-EU relations?
I think those words echo the perception, I think, here definitely of the government. Which is Spain is a trading nation. It is very much European in that sense. We have a large proportion of our economy linked to external trade, not just with China. I mean, across the board with the US, with Latin America, we have a long-standing trade and investment relationship. And we think that our strategic autonomy, the resilience of our economy, is built on the diversity of the markets that we access and the economic relationships we have all over the world. So I think that visit and that message was a call for the building of a fair, more balanced, but open trade relationship. The Prime Minister was in China also last year, and he sent a very similar message. And he said, to a large extent, what happens here is also in China's hands, because if China recommits to its openness, there's a much higher chance of us saving the international trading regime than if it doesn't. So, as you were saying before, I think there are responsibilities on both sides of this debate. But Spain's initial stance is that we would rather enhance the international trading regime than seeing it fall to pieces.